Good morning and welcome to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590 KDJS. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization and would like to be featured on the program, call the KDJS Newsline at 320-235-2900. That's 320-235-2900.
On Community Roundtable here today, we have Jesse Grabow, Minnesota State Highway Patrol. Jesse, welcome to the show. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. It's always great to talk.
Always great to give people some safety tips this time of year. We've had a little bit of snow, not a whole lot. Driving can get interesting. People still are in the habits of driving on a dry road, and all of a sudden it gets a little icy and things change, you know. How busy has the State Patrol been in recent weeks? How's it been going for you guys?
Well, it's always something going on because traffic is always moving. But with this, time of year, we bring in some, how should we say, interesting dynamics or elements as far as traveling along the roadways with snow, ice, fog, you name it. And sometimes a combination of all those things. So it makes it a little more difficult. So we haven't had any extreme weather. I mean, there's been some difficult days definitely here or there. But at the same time, we've had probably more good days than bad days. But with that being said, we just need to get that feel under our feet, or I should say under our tires as far as driving on the roadways, just allowing more time for travel. I mean, it's just going to take a little bit longer generally to get from point A to point B. And that's just it. For a lot of these situations where people either crash, spin outs, get stuck, whatever, it's just because generally they're driving too fast for conditions. So if they just slow it down, that would make a lot of difference right there.
Yeah, the conditions can be strange. You and I were talking before going on the air, and I was explaining our frozen fog situation we had 2 or 3 days of recently, and just a little bit as we chat on our program here. We're recording on a Wednesday morning, and here we are on Sunday morning with the playback. But the frozen fog thing, it was thick, hard to see. The fog was freezing and falling like snow. It would cover your vehicle. It was a real odd deal, but that's Minnesota. We kind of get everything, don't we?
We really do. I mean, it's an interesting time of year as far as weather and the dynamics that brings. Like you see, that freezing fog is what it's doing to your vehicle, to the windshield, to the roads. I mean, it makes it very difficult. So with that being said, I mean, it's very important to pay attention. I mean, driving is a constant evaluation. I mean, as you're moving along, you need to immediately reevaluate around every curve, corner, over every hill. I mean, things can change so quickly. So I generally say this time of the year is probably not best to use that cruise control. On obvious days where it's snow, ice, things like that, or even those foggy days, just because there's so much more moisture in the air, even though in the air, and even though the roads may seem fine, there are areas that get a little more problematic, and usually that's those overpasses, the bridge decks, on-off ramps. I mean, that's where you see people either accelerating or slowing down. It's just one of those things where things get a little bit slippery, even intersections. So allowing more time for travel just by backing it down. And then I think that, too, is maybe one of the more underreported factors in a lot of these situations where things happen, whether it's a crash or a spin-out or something like that. It's, people try to react, but they're unable to do so because they're following that vehicle in front of them too closely. So definitely need to increase your following distance this time of year.
Yeah, you don't want to be tailgating. I mean, anti-lock brakes are a great invention, but not the cure-all, are they? Well,
they're really not. It's so many things when it comes to your vehicle. I mean, obviously you want to make sure that your brakes are in good working order, but also your tires. Tires are not something that you want to on as far as running them down to the minimum this time of year. You want to run a good tire. I'd recommend a good seasonal tire like a mud and snow tire this time of year. But if anything, just having 4 good tires on your vehicle can make a big difference. Don't try to get by on the bare minimum this time of year. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, and proper inflation too. It's amazing how just a little bit too much air or not enough air, the difference that can make. I mean, everything is really specialized, and the specs are specs. You should live up to them, right?
Yes, that's just it. I mean, just a quick walk around your vehicle each time you fire it up. Make sure all the lights are working. Do a little walk around. Look at the tires. Sometimes that can be a little deceiving itself. So knowing your pressure on those vehicles on the tires can be very important also.
A lot of us have never been stranded in this day and age with cell phones and everything. Life is a little easier than, say, 40 years ago. I remember driving 3:30 in the morning, and I'm thinking, okay, if my car breaks down, who do I know in this area that I could walk to, or this area, or this area? Anymore, I mean, the communications have changed so much. What's a good preparation for a breakdown in your vehicle? If you've got to sit in your vehicle for a while, what should you have with you?
Boy, that's a great question, because I think you're right. A lot of us have gotten so dependent on technology is that help can generally get to us fairly quickly. However, there are some circumstances where storms and weather is so bad that resources can be tied up, and it could be a while before it gets to you. So it's still, you need to fall back on the good old-fashioned, again, there's winter survival kits. But I think one of the most important things to have in that vehicle is just extra warm clothing, warm gear. I mean, if your vehicle breaks down and it quits running, you lose heat, that vehicle's going to get cold quite quickly in some of these extreme frigid temperatures. So with that being said, warm clothing, extra blankets, gloves, hats, that's a big part of it. And that being said, too, generally speaking, I mean, it's going to be best for you to stay in your vehicle. I mean, obviously, unless the vehicle's stuck in the middle of the road, you would probably want to remove yourself in that situation. But again, let's say you're down in the ditch or something like that. I mean, obviously, you want to make sure that you're visible, but just staying in your vehicle is generally going to be your best bet in a real bad situation. But again, warm clothing, warm part of it in a blanket. Let's say your vehicle starts to overheat or does catch on fire, and you think, well, I got 911, I can call help. But some of these rural areas, it may be 10, 15 minutes before help can get you. If you're standing outside in just a sweatshirt and jeans, boy, you're going to get cold quite quickly. So just having something to throw around yourself till help can get there can make really all the difference in the world.
Well, you think back and think to these rural areas, there are some spots yet where it's tough to get a signal.
Oh, very true.
Yeah, you look at and then you're the company you're with. You know, they're strong in some areas, maybe not quite as strong yet somewhere else. So you can't always rely on the cell phone. Do you recommend just a piece of bright clothing or something you can tie to the outside of your vehicle, a little more visible? You know.
Yeah, that's a good thing too. I mean, but you look at a lot of our new vehicles. There's really not any, tall antennas on the vehicles anymore for the most part. So we're seeing a lot less of that. So I mean, that was something that tie like a bright-colored ribbon or something to get attention. You would want to remove those types of things. Some people have signs like "call help," that type of thing. But if you leave the vehicle or anything like that, obviously remove that sign that, so we're not still calling for help after you get. But the other thing, if you do have to leave the vehicle, leave a note in the dash with the cell phone. So the emergency personnel, generally it's going to be law enforcement, can, contact you and say, did you get where you're going? Because otherwise we might have to organize like a search party, search and rescue, and it just makes our job easier if we can stay in contact with each other.
Indeed, and as I'm watching out the window here, looking at the Business Highway 71 as we visit, I see a vehicle coming, and I'm like, what is that? And it was not a car, not a truck, and here it looks to be a four-wheeler or a small tractor going over to the park, maybe somebody going out to ice fish. You run into different vehicles on the road sometimes, and this time of year, guys are ice fishing. Most people will trailer their equipment, be it the fish house or a four-wheeler or what have you, out to the lake. Can you legally drive a four-wheeler on the side of the road or on the road and get point A to point B? Or?
Generally speaking, on state roads, that would not be allowed. But on a lot of, such as maybe city, township roads, county streets, they might be allowed. But again, it's always best to check with what the local ordinances are in those situations too. But with that being said, I mean, just whether they should be there or not, I mean, we need to all share the roadways. I mean, even though something shouldn't be there, we still need to do our part to share the roadways so we don't obviously hit those types of vehicles. And just by paying a little more attention and slowing down can really make all the difference in the road.
Yeah,
crashes.
Hey, and when I think of four-wheelers, we've had a few guys get wet here lately when it comes to being on the ice,
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, if you're going to be going out on the lakes, boy, you really want to know what the condition of the ice before you head out there, no doubt.
Something recently, a couple of things that come to mind here, Jesse. I know you've got the newspaper column, the question and answer section, which I find extremely interesting, and one of which, how do you decide where you as an officer are going to be when you've pulled somebody off to the side for whatever reason? How do you decide I'm going to go to the driver's side or I'm going to go to the passenger side? That was one of your questions recently, and we deserve a good answer on that one, I think. Here, what do you say?
Well, it just kind of depends on each circumstance. It depends on wherever I have the most room. It's going to be the safest for everybody here involved. For me, I generally like to approach on those passenger sides just because I feel I'm a little safer from the traffic that's moving by in a lot of those circumstances. But in certain situations, depending on what's maybe blocking me on that side, whether it's maybe median barrier or something like that, if we're on a bridge or just wherever it may be. There's some areas where I get out here, there's really no shoulder, and it's a very, very steep ditch. So I may still have to do some of those driver's side approaches, but it depends on each circumstance and what I come across on each traffic stop or motorist assist or wherever it may be.
Well, do you look back and watch traffic? I mean, to me, that'd be a little unnerving sometimes, you know?
I tell you what, every time you approach a vehicle on any traffic contact, there's a lot going through your mind as far as, staying in contact with the occupants of the vehicle, and of course what's maybe coming up behind you, especially this time of year when we may be dealing with situations such as icy or slippery roads and those types of things. I mean, you almost feel like you're keeping your head on a swivel. I mean, moving back and forth and just maintaining contact of as I mentioned, the occupants. So it's just a lot of things going on. I mean, does it create stress and pressure? Most certainly, but again, that's why we definitely continue to serve and train in all of these circumstances.
And people not paying attention, that bugs me when I'm driving. I'm sure it bugs you guys, you know.
Well, and that's a big part of it. I think distracted driving is probably one of the most, the main factors of a lot of these crashes when we look at them too, as far as, why are some of these happening? Why are officers getting struck alongside the road? They're out there in vehicles that are well lit, well marked, with emergency lights and everything like that, yet people are still striking a number of SWAT cars each and every year. And I've been hit myself, and a lot of that comes down to, again, as I mentioned earlier, people driving too fast for conditions and just not paying attention. And I think whether it's the cell phones or whatever device in the vehicle, there's always been distractions, and there always will be. But again, it's what each person chooses to do or not to do when they're driving.
You mentioned being struck yourself after you've had somebody pulled over. What was that like? Expand on that a little bit.
I tell you, it was just it was very traumatic. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I was injured and had to have surgery, and it's just one of those situations where I don't ever want to experience again. However, for everything that went wrong in that situation, a couple things went right. I'm still here, and we've had it happen to numerous troopers all over Minnesota. And unfortunately, we do on an all too often basis, and it's one of those things I like to use my experience to say, hey, people, please, if you see anybody alongside the road, try to move over, and if you can't move over, at least slow down a little bit. Just ease up off the gas pedal. It helps keep us a lot safer by doing that, and hopefully keep us from getting hit.
Pay attention. Were you in the car or outside the car when you were hit?
I was inside my squad car at the time when I was struck.
Wow. Did you know what was coming?
I did not know.
That's just got to be a total shock to the system. My goodness. It's like being rear-ended at a stoplight and you're not looking in the mirror and you don't know somebody's barreling down on you. I can't imagine that.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I was hit at freeway speeds, and had it been just a few seconds difference, I had been out of my vehicle, and the path that my vehicle ended up traveling after I was struck would have went right over me where the few seconds I was prior to that. So, like I say, I'm just fortunate to be here.
Wow. That's crazy.
Very, very lucky.
Yeah, no kidding, for sure. I was reading something the other day, Jesse. It really caught my eye. Our neighbors to the south here down in Iowa, they have standards for child safety seats in your vehicle that I guess Iowa's one of the few states that don't have the same standards as I think it's the American Medical Association or the Pediatrics Association, and they're not up to what they strongly recommend. And then I saw the statistic that came out after that. Iowa's got the fourth most child or infant deaths in vehicle crashes of any state in the union. Boy, that's just almost kind of scary that there are a handful of states that aren't meeting standards that have been set for a lot of people.
Right. I tell you what. I mean, as a parent, I've got 3 young children. All 3 of them are in some type of child booster seat at this point yet, and one of them actually even qualifies based on age as far as not having to be in there. However, he's very short yet, so we keep him in there. So that's for Minnesota children that are age 8. Or once they reach the height of 4'9", they do not need to be in that booster type seat any longer. Well, my oldest, however, he's quite short yet, and I tell you what that booster seat does, it just gives him that proper fit as far as getting in the vehicle, being seated in the vehicle and placed in there. So that seatbelt gives him the proper fit yet. So in the event of a crash, everything will hopefully work properly, and that's the whole idea behind it. So I tell you what, always err on the side of caution when it comes to that. It's like, well, he's 9 years old, but I ask you, how tall are they? If they're under the height of 4'9", they still need to be in some. They really should still be in some type of booster seat.
Yeah, for sure. Now, next question, we've got to follow that up. Speaking from personal experience here, I am not an expert at putting those seats in a vehicle and getting it tied down right or whatever, getting it in there. Are there classes, lessons? How do you learn how to put a seat in the car if you're a grandparent,
Right. It's very tricky. So a lot of times what a lot of communities will do, they'll offer like car seat clinics, that type of thing, just a place you can pull in. Sometimes it's done at the local public health department, fire departments, ambulance garage, things like that. And if you can't get to one of those, just contact somebody from public health or something like that. They usually have a car seat technician, somebody that you can just stop in and get a quick lesson on. I mean, I know hospitals used to do that too in a lot of places. It's just one of those things that if you can get that information. For me, if you can't get to one of those places, there's a lot of great places to go on the internet and get that information right off the web. A lot of walkthrough videos, where you can for the most part, look at the type of seat that you're using. There's going to be a website generally stamped on there for that type of brand of car seat. So, and they'll usually as far as how to get it in there and what to do. And they're really, really helpful because having 3 kids go through a number of car seats, throughout our life has been interesting. So I'm always trying to learn more on that too. And I think that's important for each and every parent and grandparent and whoever's transporting the world's most precious cargo, meaning our kids.
Boy, I think back to a couple of weeks ago. We were at church on Wednesday night, and some of the family was there, including a little 3.5-year-old gal, and I was going to leave, and we had separate vehicles, and they said, "Well, you take the little gal with you," and I'm like, "Do I have to move a car seat? Do I have to do what do I do?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm not driving until it's right," and they just said, "Here's the keys to my car. It's already in. Take my car instead."
Sometimes that is easier, and then that's just it. Because one of the studies I've seen not too long ago was like 70% of people that are transporting children with car seats are generally 70% of them are doing it incorrectly. It's not that they're not using them; it's just that they're not doing it properly. A lot of times, it's putting a kid that's not in the right seat. They're putting a small child in a seat that's generally designed maybe for a child bigger. So again, it's always going back to the manufacturing specs on as far as what is allowed on that type of thing. So it can get difficult. So it's very important to stay up on that. It usually involves some homework ahead of time as far as planning and travel, and that's driving should be about planning ahead. Things can change as far as what you see along the roadside and the precautions you take before you travel each and every time.
Yeah, don't feel bad about a lack of knowledge. Ask a question, you might save a life. That's what it's all about.
Yes.
I'm the first one to say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm ignorant on this topic. I don't know. Can you help me?" I'd rather say that than get a phone call about an accident or something. So.
That's perfect. That's the best way. One of the best ways of looking at it. I say the same thing to people. If you ever see, if you get a question, you ever see somebody in law enforcement out and about, whether it's in a restaurant, a gas station, never feel like you're bugging us. So that's when I want to have those conversations. I'd rather have those conversations here than along the roadside on a traffic stop for something you may did wrong, or worse yet, at the scene of a crash. So again, by all means, if you ever see somebody in a uniform, please, by all means, we're glad to chat. I'm always happy to have a little talk and try to leave you in a little bit better shape than I found you, maybe.
All right, Jesse, you're based out of Detroit Lakes, right?
Detroit Lakes is my headquarters. However, as the public information officer, I serve about 1/3 Minnesota, so that's everything north and west of the Twin City area.
Jesse Grabow, State Patrol. So where you live, you've got to see some animals out on the road. We're not talking domestic here. I think back to 3 weeks ago, we had a black bear in Spicer at about 6:30 one night, and that caught everybody by surprise, obviously. What kind of calls you guys get when it comes? I know a lot of white-tailed deer. Anything else unique in that aspect of the business?
Boy, you name it, I've probably heard. If we have it in Minnesota, I've had it either reported on the highway or hit on the highway. One of the more unusual ones here was a while back was an emu had got loosed, and we had one of those on the interstate there a while back, and that was interesting as far as rounding it up and getting it back to where it belongs. So yeah, it's every day can be, how should we say, an adventure, I guess. It's maybe the best word.
Everybody's got the same thought that I do right now. How do you round up an emu out on the highway?
Well, it's just you got to just find those inner cowboy instincts and just do what you got to do. But it's usually a team effort. And I know one of the incidents we had recently was a cow that got out along the interstate. We have no idea to this day where that one came from, but it got along the interstate, and he did not want to stop for anybody. It was an extremely cold day, and it was just about constant communication. I was able to get in contact with some other farmers along the roadway. We cut some fence, got them steered off into field and into a cattle truck, and, well, I guess he went to a new home. But it's just one of those things that usually takes some coordinated teamwork efforts and things like that.
Man, I'm still visualizing this emu because I have seen one on the loose inside a building once during an ag show. And it raised a little ruckus, and a lot of feathers flew. It was, those are some crazy birds. If people that don't know what an emu is, kind of like an ostrich, I guess, if we had to compare them, right?
Oh, yes.
And they can run pretty fast, I'm going to imagine. They can move when they need to. I was driving to work last Wednesday morning. Animals come to mind. It was a calm start to the day, and I'm north of Spicer on Highway 23, headed south, and I see a couple of things in the ditch. And I go, wait a minute, those aren't weeds. The wind isn't blowing. It was two white tails flagged up, headed south in the ditch, and they were running pretty fast. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? And it wasn't 5 seconds later, in front of me comes Wile E. Coyote from the west going to from the east going to the west ditch where the deers were. Evidently the coyote was hungry. I'm not sure. But yeah, wild, coyote in front of me, deer on the right, and I had a semi behind me, and I slowed down, and he was paying attention. He slowed down. We didn't want to have any mincemeat on the highway, I guess, and it worked out. Don't know what happened to the critters. They took off. But tell you, that'll wake you right up when you're leaving for work and you're 2 miles down the road on a Wednesday morning,
Yeah, most certainly. That is a good one.
Man, strange stories. What do you see when you're driving that you just scratch your head and you're like, oh, gosh. I've seen people reading books while they drive. What have you seen?
Probably one of the more frustrating ones I've seen was an actual iPad duct taped to the steering wheel of the actual vehicle as they're going down the roadway.
Really?
That just kind of very frustrating. Obviously, very very dangerous and very frustrating in that sense because there was also a couple kids in the car. Just one of those things that you just defies common sense, I guess.
Did they know that you were there?
Well, I was on the interstate, so I was up alongside of them. So I pulled in behind them, hit the lights, and they finally noticed me when they weren't so distracted. Walked up there, and I'll generally, when I stop somebody, I'll usually tell them, right away, obviously the reason that I stopped them. In this situation, I just said, I asked them, I said, do you realize why I'm stopping you here today? And they had no idea.
Really?
So
an iPad taped to the steering wheel, and they had no clue.
Correct.
Amazing. I was north of Wilmer one day, Jesse, on 71, coming into to where you can either hit the bypass or you can come in on the business route. And there was an officer with lights going for at least a mile behind a car. The person in this car was applying makeup and getting all fixed up, shall we say, and had no clue that there was somebody behind them trying to get their attention. Gosh. I guess driving is meant for many things besides driving.
It's so scary because we most of us are probably pretty good drivers, but we are sharing with the roadways with other people making the sport chases. Yeah, I've seen the makeup, I've seen the shaving, cutting nails. I mean, you name it. I've seen it behind the wheel. Newspapers, books. Mm-hmm. It's just there's always so we're not even talking about just the electronic devices. There's so many things, and we got to remember that when we're out there driving. Like, wow, we need to expect that unexpected and be that defensive driver.
I just saw a survey a few days ago about what people do behind the wheel, and shaving and makeup were two of the biggest things. I'm sitting there as a guy, and I'm going, would I want to put a razor or something to my neck when I'm going 65? No. Doesn't sound safe to me. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, no, not safe at all. So, again, it's just one of those things. You scratch your head and you try to have the conversations and get the word out there. I mean, it's because to me, it should be common sense, but that's just, I think people they get busy. They get busy, and then they try to rationalize it, justify it. It's like, well, I'm just so busy. I can save time if I'm doing this. And I tell you what, just because you've done it how many times before, dozen times, 100 times, whatever, eventually those bad habits can catch up with you and result in a crash. And if that crash can become very serious, it could result in some serious injury to you or somebody else, or even worse, some death.
Yeah, there's just so many bad things that can happen. The good things are pretty minimal. We get toward the end of the year here and getting ready to wrap up our fast-moving half hour here, Jesse. I'm guessing there'll be some saturation patrols coming out like there are this time of year. I mean, it's the holiday season. It's the holiday party season. How busy do you guys get?
It's busy, and as a matter of fact, we happen to be right in the middle of a DWI enforcement campaign. It's something that kicked off the night before Thanksgiving and will run right up to the New Year holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is not only the Minnesota State Patrol, but approximately 300 other agencies all across Minnesota have extra law enforcement out there looking for impaired drivers. Now, when we have these extra enforcement campaigns, it's really not about the number of tickets we write or arrests we make, but it's about trying to prevent these very things. So that's why we've been trying to get that message out there over and over again. If you're going to go and celebrate, because we do see a number of alcohol-related incidents this time of year, whether it's holiday parties, gatherings, whatever it may be, we do see alcohol-related incidents go up as far as arrests, crashes, and whatnot. But it's very preventable. That's what we want to see people, if they're going to go and celebrate, just be smart. Have that sober ride, that designated driver in place. Just one of the recent enforcement campaigns on the Thanksgiving holiday, we had a number of drivers that were the designated driver of that vehicle that were arrested for DWI, and they ended up testing like 2 times over the legal limit. So obviously, if the DD and you're doing that, you're doing it wrong. So if you're going to be the DD, that means you're not drinking at all. Be that smart person that's going to get everybody home safely. And so maybe some people had a plan. Well, obviously, that plan fell through or whatever, didn't work out. What's your plan B? Life is really more about plan B. Okay, what happened? So for the family, for the friends that don't go out and celebrate, let the people you care about, let your family, let your other friends know, hey, I'm there to get you home. It's you know, the taxi, the Uber, or the so-and-so that didn't show up to get you home. Don't risk it. Don't chance it. I'm there. Call me. I don't care if it's 1, 2 in the morning. Call me. I will get you home safely. Or if you're at the party, maybe it's best just to stay there.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing what people think they can do, and if they were to see a video of themselves, they'd go, "Oh, I guess I wasn't so normal." You know?
Right.
Yeah, it's
very true.
A lot of places. I know in the summer months. I'm not sure about the winter months. We'll have a bus. I know Candioi County is at least in the summer months. They've got a bus on weekend nights that will stop at certain areas of Wilmer, of Spicer, I think maybe New London. I'm not sure there, but yeah, you can sign up, get the bus ride home, leave your vehicle, come back and get it the next day. It's a good plan, you know.
They really are. I mean, if you see those types of things, please take advantage of them. Use those things. That's what they're for. It's to hopefully give you another way to get around safely, so you're just not risking it. It's just not worth it, because everybody wants to know, like, well, how much can I have before I shouldn't drive? And there's no perfect answer for that, because each situation can be different. But I tell you what, if you find yourself having to ask that question, chances are you probably shouldn't be driving. So again, always err on the side of safety.
Indeed. Well, that's going to wrap things here, Jesse. Gosh, like I say, time flies by when you're talking about a lot of interesting stuff. Hopefully the end of the year is good for you and everybody with the State Patrol, and, of course, all of our local and county officers as well. You know, we always hope that everybody's making it from point A to point B okay. We'll look forward to chatting again here. We'll have to do this some more when you're in the neighborhood. Stop by, or we'll hook up on the phone, okay?
Well, thank you so much, and have a safe holidays.
Jesse Grabow with the State Patrol Public Information Officer on Community Roundtable.
You've been listening to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590 KDJS. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization and would like to be featured on the program, call the KDJS Newsline at 320-235-2900. That's 320-235-2900.